Today was supposed to be an off day for me. I was supposed to not do any videos today. I already shot them last week and you would have never known the difference other than the fact I was still wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And I did do 2 of those this morning, but in place of the 3rd one, which I'll do tomorrow, I want to cover something that happened today that someone's already asked me about, and that is the Las Vegas shooting. Of course, if you're an American, which a lot of you are not who watch my channel, you may not be as familiar, but as the headlines read, at least 50 dead and more than 400 injured in Las Vegas shooting near Mandalay Bay. Somebody asked me to, will you share your thoughts on this? Yes, I will. And at the same time, I want to connect it back to hair loss, not for the sake of doing that, but because I'm trained to see patterns and similarities. And here's where I'm coming from. I ask myself, first world problem? That's what I ask. First world problem. I ask that about not only the shooting that occurred with at least 50 dead and over 400 injured in this shooting from a mass shooter who apparently committed suicide before the authorities got to him. First world problem. That's the phrase that comes to mind. And it's not only for this, but it's also for hair loss. Here's what I think. When I think of these shootings, because I'm familiar with them now, we have one, every 2 years there's some kind of crazy guy, on all these kind of antidepressants. He's very depressed guy. Who knows? For all I know, the drugs that he takes to help with his depression or whatever it is make it even worse. Because I have noticed there's a pattern in which apparently, like the Colorado shooter when the Dark Knight movie came out. There's a theory that the reason they're doing this is because the drugs actually make things worse for what's already going on. There's theories on that. But ultimately, we've got this thing that happens where these crazy people take guns and kill our members of our American family here in our nation. And when that happens, it's easy to think, man, sorry, I'm actually trying to process it. I'm just keeping it real. I see it as a first world problem because I feel like I don't hear this stuff happening in other parts of the world unless it's linked to terrorism, like some kind of extreme religious Muslim thing or whatever it is. As an American, that's what we're seeing. When we hear people die and 50 people die, 100, it's because of some crazy extreme Muslim terrorist did it. They did the bomb, and that's what happens. So when it happens here and it's one of our own that does it, it's like it's always one of those 2 categories. And it's like, does that happen in the rest of the world? Aside from extreme terrorists that have some kind of, does that happen? I feel like that's an American problem. I feel like it's a first world problem that in such a land of abundance, we also have people who will go do something this crazy and basically be a sniper and shoot out people at a music festival. Like, is that how it is? I'm asking the question. In the rest of the world, this doesn't happen, right? Where just some crazy guy gets a hold of some guns and just starts shooting people without some kind of religious motive. Like, in my mind, there's only crazy people in America who shoot people in mass quantities, and then there's the crazy Muslim extremists, and that's it. Now, by the way, when I say this about the crazy Muslim extremists, please know, I'm not saying that Muslims are crazy and that all Muslims are that way. I recognize that it's only a fringe of that. Just in the same way, it's the same thing with any religion, including Christians. There are extreme Christians that I do not identify with either. And so I do not want to make it seem like that. I'm just saying, as an American, this is how it's perceived as I am understanding the news. And that when we're not having to worry about extreme terrorists in other parts of the world blowing people up in buildings and stuff, then we're having to, then, okay, well, now that happened, let's have it happen over here in America, and let's have some crazy loner guy who's depressed and on all these drugs and has access to guns. Now he's going to do that thing. Is that a first world problem that we have these crazy guys with guns? I'm asking the question. I don't know, because I'm an American. My perspective is shrouded on what I am exposed to. It seems like it's a first world problem that we would have a guy that, despite all we have in America, that a guy ends up that lonely, that off the charts, and has access to those weapons, that he would go and do something like that. And at the same time, here I am doing a hair loss channel. Silly? Could I use the word silly? That's how I feel. I feel the fact that I have a channel about hair loss, when you put it in perspective with the Las Vegas shooting or any kind of terrorist thing where mass number of people lose their lives over nothing, that this is just silly that I have a hair loss channel. Because this is a first world problem. You know, on other parts of the world, people are dying and starving, and their countries are stricken with poverty, and they don't have clean water, and there's a war going around them at all times. And then we have 25 minutes a day to talk about hair loss. And those people, I don't know that hair loss ever is something that they think about. This is me just attempting to put things in perspective. Very raw and unrehearsed. But I feel that both these mass shooters that happen in America like this, about every 2 years it feels like we've got one, and hair loss, us having the time and energy to talk about it, it just sort of seems right now, to put it in perspective compared to this shooting that happened this morning in Las Vegas, or last night, it just sort of seems silly and petty. It just kind of seems like a first world problem as I'm talking about it right now. That this would happen, this shooting, and this, that we have this much time and energy to talk about hair loss. I'm going to keep talking about hair loss, but I'm just saying on a day like today, that's how it feels as I'm trying to put it in perspective.